Every single time that you step into the gym, there is a biological process that is going on in your body. And most people never understand it. Because they don't understand it, they train wrong, they eat wrong, they recover wrong. And then they don't understand why they look the same 6 months later. Today, I'm going to break down the complete science of hypertrophy. We're going to cover what it is, how it actually works in your body, what triggers it, and then towards the end of the video, we're going to break down how you can apply it to your training. So you stop wasting time in the gym and you can start seeing real results and see actual muscle growth. If you don't know who I am, my name is Troxell, and for the past 4 years, I've navigated the chaos that is the fitness industry. And through all of that chaos, I have taken everything and I've broken it down into step-by-step systems that are actually applicable to your life. And through those systems, I've built a body and mind that some people would consider exceptional. Now, the reason that people don't achieve that body or that mind is not because they just lacked motivation. It's because they lack the underlying systems of what actually builds that body and mind. Before we talk about what hypertrophy does for you, you need to know what it actually is. Because if you don't understand this, you're going to be training blind. And nobody wants to do that. And training blind is how people waste years in the gym. So hypertrophy is the increase in size of your muscle fibers. That's it. So your muscles, they get bigger because the individual muscle fibers, they actually increase in diameter. Now, this is different from hyperplasia, and don't get scared by that word. What hyperplasia means is that your body is actively creating new muscle fibers. And hypertrophy is the increase in size of muscle fibers, not the generation of new ones. So your body, it's not making new muscle fibers. It's simply making the ones that you already have bigger. So when you look at somebody who's jacked, they don't have more muscle fibers than you do. Their muscle fibers are just thicker. So each individual one has gotten bigger and expanded over time. So why does this happen? This happens because of one simple equation that your body, it runs off constantly. So section 2 is how hypertrophy works. Your body is always building muscle protein and breaking it down. Every single day, whether you train or not, the cycle is still running. So the technical terms are muscle protein synthesis, which is when your body is making new muscle proteins, and muscle protein breakdown, which is when your body is recycling old muscle protein. So think of it like a brick wall. Your body is always adding new bricks and removing the old ones. So if you lay more bricks than you remove, the wall, it starts to get bigger. And if you remove more bricks than you lay, the wall, it starts to shrink. Hypertrophy happens when the building side is constantly winning over the breakdown side, consistently over weeks and months. Now, neither training alone or eating alone is enough to tip the scale in your favor. It's simply the combination of both. So if you're training hard but you don't eat enough protein, your body's not going to have enough bricks to lay on that brick wall. On the flip side, if you eat a ton of protein but never train, your body has no reason to lay the bricks. So it's the combination of both of these that starts to tip the scale towards growth. So here's where this gets interesting. After a hard training session, the rate at which your body is creating new muscle protein, it spikes dramatically. Research shows that it's elevated significantly 4 hours after training. It starts to peak around 24 hours, and then it goes back to normal around 36 hours. This is why training each muscle group more than one time a week makes sense. So if the growth signal from Monday's chest workout is basically gone by Wednesday morning, you're leaving days in between where no growth signal is being sent. But we're going to come back to this later when we talk about training application. So your body knows that it needs to build more muscle protein. But what actually tells the cells to start building? There's a system inside of your muscle cells called mTOR. You can think of this like a control switch. So when it's turned on, it's actively sending those growth signals to build the muscle protein. And when it's built off, the process is simply slowing down. So there's 3 things that flip this switch on. And the first one is mechanical loading. Now, this is commonly referred to as mechanical tension. And this is the actual physical tension on the muscle when you go to the gym and you work out. So when your muscle fibers experience force, and this is like in the middle of a rep, there's a ton of force on the muscle, it sends a signal to that mTOR and it sends that signal to that, and that is what flips the switch on to start producing that muscle growth phase. This is the most powerful input. This is the primary driver. So number 2 is amino acids, specifically leucine. And don't worry, we're going to explain these terms. So when you eat protein, the protein, it gets broken down into amino acids. Leucine is one of those amino acids that has the strongest indicator of flipping this switch on. And this is why protein intake matters so much, because it's more than calories. It's the specific signal to start muscle growth. So number 3 is insulin and growth factors. Now, you don't really have to worry about these, but these can help the process of muscle growth. And I just wanted to include them to make this list a full list. And they're supporting, but they're not one of the main drivers. The reason this matters so much is because it tells you exactly what you need to do. So you need to put tension on your muscles through training, and you need to eat sufficient protein to get that amount of leucine to keep that switch flipped on. And remember, that switch is literally the signal of growth. It's literally the switch that turns on that tells your muscles to grow. So that's the full system. Everything else is kind of just optimization. So do hormones matter? Now, you've probably heard people talking about testosterone spikes after a workout or testosterone boost during a certain exercise. But research has shown that these don't really drive hypertrophy. So we've established that MTOR is the switch. Now, how does training specifically turn the switch on? There's 3 things that happens in your muscles to create the flip of the switch, and they're not equal. So mechanical tension is the primary driver. This is the actual tension on the muscle. Let's say like a bicep curl. It's the actual tension on the muscle. This is the force that your muscle fibers, they experience when you work out. You can think of this like a pressure sensor. So when your muscles are under a certain amount of load and there's enough tension in the muscle, once the gauge gets to a certain point, it sends that signal to MTOR. So this is the main event. This is the thing, and without this, hypertrophy does not happen. So metabolic stress is secondary, and it's kind of been debated, but this is the pump. This is the burn and the buildup of lactate in your muscles. Does this help? Maybe. Some researchers have suggested that this may play a small additive role. But some exercises that produce the most amount of metabolic stress, like endurance training, they don't produce near as much hypertrophy as resistance training. So metabolic stress is not the thing that you should be chasing. It might help on the margins, but it's not what you should be looking for. So muscle damage is likely unnecessary. So this is what was traditionally thought to be the muscle growth trigger. This is the idea that you need to break down the muscle to build it stronger. And we discussed earlier that hypertrophy is the increase of the muscle fibers that you already have. Unless you're in puberty or after and you're still building muscle fibers. But we discovered that hypertrophy is the increase in the muscle size that you already have. Now, people, they commonly refer to, and I fell in this trap myself, they commonly refer to hypertrophy as the breaking down of muscle. Because the exhaustion, the metabolic stress, and the mechanical tension, people refer to that as the muscle being broken down. But the actual physical representation of muscle damage, it's likely not necessary. And excessive damage actually impairs recovery, and it reduces the amount of days that you're able to train. So training that minimizes unnecessary damage, but maximizes that tension, it's going to get better results. So the takeaway here is very clear. Your goal in the gym is to create maximum mechanical tension on the targeted muscle group. Now, this is not just to get the biggest pump or to get as sore as possible. This is about controlled mechanical tension. So now you understand the system. You know what hypertrophy is and you know how it works. So the question becomes, what do you actually do in the gym or in the kitchen to make sure that you're triggering this process so your muscles get bigger and you get more jacked? So we're going to jump straight into numbers here. And the first thing that we're going to discuss is volume. So how much should you be training and how many sets should you have? The optimal range is 10 to 20 sets per muscle group per week. So if you're going from 20 to 25 sets per muscle group per week, you're likely excessively overtraining. So an example of this is if you're doing 3 sets of bench one day, and that's the only day that you're training chest for that week, you would likely want to add another day in your plan to where you're getting more sets in, or you add more sets to that said day. So the next thing is proximity to failure. So we're going to be uncovering how close you need to go to failure and sort of like what rep range that you need to hit failure in. So researchers, they have compared low load training, which is more reps with a lower weight, and high load training, which is more weight, fewer reps. And they found no significant difference in hypertrophy when sets were taken close to failure. So loads ranging from 30% to 85% of your 1 rep max, they showed similar growth. And that's only when the effort has been equalized. So the effort in each set, whether it be the 35% or the 85%, when the effort is matched between the two, they both showed similar growth. So why does this matter? This matters because the weight on the bar, it kind of doesn't matter compared to how hard you take the set. So what matters here is the proximity to failure. So how close can you get to that 1 rep where you physically cannot push the bar off your chest? So the practical recommendation here is to train within 1 to 3 reps of failure on each set. Now, without all the research, a personal anecdote here, just go to failure. It feels a lot better, and it's so much more fun in the gym, and it just makes the gym worth going because it releases so much endorphins and it just feels good. So whether you're going 1 to 3 reps close to failure, just push your sets hard, and me personally, I recommend to go to failure. So the 6 to 12 rep range is still a good recommendation, not because it's magically superior to another rep range, but because it's time efficient. You don't have to go and do 35 sets until you get to failure. You just do 6 to 12 reps until you get to failure. It's just simply more efficient. So the next thing is stretch and full range of motion. Now, there is a ton of hypertrophy research on this, and me personally, when I implemented it in my training, I saw significant growth. So multiple studies have shown that training the muscle in a length position, therefore the stretch of the muscle, it has increased the hypertrophy. So once I learned this and I started implementing this into my training, I started going into every movement that I was performing in the gym with the mindset of how can I get the deepest stretch possible in this movement, and am I doing a full range of motion? So the practical implementation of this principle in your training is think about it. Think about when you go into your next set. Let's take bicep curls, for example. How can I get the deepest stretch possible and get that full contraction? And really emphasize the stretch, because research has shown that that is when the most stimulus and growth stimulus happens. So we've discussed progressive overload before on this channel, but we're going to briefly explain it so you kind of understand how this works with hypertrophy and everything else that you've learned in this specific video. So progressive overload, what it basically is doing more reps of the same weight that you did last week, or doing the same amount of reps that you did last week with more weight. So the example that I gave in the past video is if you did 135 for 10 reps the previous week, you would do 135 for 12, or you would do 145 for 10. So the idea behind progressive overload is if you never change the weight or you never change the amount of reps and you train the same every week, you're never going to see any growth. But you need that structural mechanical tension, which is done through progressive overload, so your body can keep triggering that stimulus to grow. So if you don't know where to start with your training and you kind of want more exercises and you want a rep breakdown and you want it completely given to you, I've built a free tool exactly for that. Real quick, if you don't know where to start with your training, the first thing that you need is a program. Now, I've built a free tool exactly for this. All that you have to do is fill out a quick survey with your goal, your experience, and your equipment access. Then it will immediately give you a completely custom and tailored program to your goal and your experiences. You can save it as a PDF and it's yours forever. That's it. No email, no phone number, completely free. Links in the description. So the next thing is what happens in the kitchen. So we discussed how important protein is and that you need to get it in, but what are the guidelines for protein? The guidelines for protein is about a gram per pound of body weight. So when you're hitting this protein, a good way to think about it is that when you're eating it, like this is the thing that is triggering my body to grow the muscles. Now, if you don't know where to start with your diet, you're lost in all these calories and macros and you don't really know what's going on here. I've built a free tool exactly for that. Real quick, if you don't know where to start with your diet, the first thing that you need to do is find your maintenance calories. Now, I have built a custom free tool built exactly for that. All that you have to do is fill out a quick survey with your height, your weight, etc., and it will spit back your maintenance calories. Now, it will also give you a rough estimate of the amount of calories that you need to eat to either cut or bulk. That's it. No email, no phone number, all free. Links in the description. So the gap between the science and your training is actually implementing the science consistently. Because if you don't do that, you're never going to see growth. So do the hard stuff. Go to the gym, implement these principles that you've learned in this video, and just do it. Like, stole a slogan from Nike there. Just do it. Because if you're not implementing these scientific principles into your training, there's no reason of watching this video. So implement these principles. And I'm Gunnar Troxell, and as always, get jacked.